The year was 1834. A ship named the Thistle cut through the waves of Portland Bay, carrying with it the thorny, savage seeds of dramatic change. On board were Edward and Stephen Henty, two brothers driven by a vision of new beginnings in a distant land. They were soon joined by their brother Francis. These were the Henty brothers, and their arrival in Portland marked the start of European settlement in Victoria, forever altering the course of the region's history. The Hentys, hailing from England, brought with them not just their hopes for prosperity, but also a way of life that would clash profoundly with the ancient traditions of the land's original inhabitants. They envisioned vast pastoral lands, teeming with sheep and cattle, a stark contrast to the landscape they encountered. Portland, at that time, was a rugged, untamed wilderness, its destiny interwoven with the lives of the Aboriginal people who had called it home for countless generations. The Hentys, driven by their ambition and fueled by the promise of boundless opportunity, wasted no time in establishing their presence. They brought with them livestock, tools and laborers, all the necessary ingredients to transform the land according to their vision. The stage was set for a clash of cultures, a collision of values that would have far-reaching consequences for generations to come. The arrival of the Henty brothers marked a turning point in the history of Portland. As the Hentys established their foothold, they set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the social, economic, and environmental landscape of the region. Long before the arrival of European ships, the land that would become known as Portland was a place of ancient stories, a landscape woven into the very fabric of Aboriginal existence. For millennia, the Gunditjmara people had thrived in this region, their lives deeply connected to the rhythms of the land and the sea. Theirs was a rich and complex culture, passed down through generations, a tapestry of knowledge, beliefs and traditions that had enabled them to flourish in this unique corner of the world. The Gunditjmara people were the custodians of a profound understanding of the natural world. They knew the secrets of the seasons, the patterns of the tides, the language of the birds and the animals. Their survival depended on this intimate knowledge, a wisdom acquired over countless generations of living in harmony with the environment. The land provided them with sustenance, with materials for shelter and tools, and with a spiritual connection that permeated every aspect of their lives. Their days were spent in pursuit of food, hunting kangaroo and emu, fishing in the bountiful waters of Portland Bay, and gathering fruits, roots and berries from the surrounding bush. The Gunditjmara people were skilled hunters and gatherers, their lives dictated by the cycles of nature, their movements guided by the stars and the seasons. The arrival of the Henty brothers shattered this ancient equilibrium. The arrival of the Henty brothers in Portland Bay was not simply a meeting of two different cultures. It was a collision of worldviews, a clash between ways of life separated by a vast gulf of understanding. The Hentys, with their European sensibilities and their ambitions of establishing a pastoral empire, viewed the land through a very different lens than the Gunditjmara people, who had been its custodians for millennia. These contrasting perspectives, fueled by a lack of communication and a fundamental misunderstanding of each other's values, set the stage for a tragic chapter in the history of Portland. The initial interactions between the Henty brothers and the Gunditjmara people were likely marked by a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Neither group could have fully comprehended the profound and lasting impact their encounter would have on the course of their respective destinies. The Europeans, with their superior weaponry and their unfamiliar customs, must have seemed both intriguing and intimidating to the Aboriginal inhabitants. The Gunditjmara, in turn, with their deep knowledge of the land and their ancient traditions, likely appeared mysterious and perhaps even threatening to the newcomers. Language barriers would have posed a significant obstacle to meaningful communication. Gestures and rudimentary sign language could only convey so much. Misunderstandings were inevitable and the potential for conflict was ever present. The Hentys, driven by their vision of establishing a pastoral enterprise, may have misinterpreted the Gunditjmara's nomadic lifestyle and their deep connection to the land as a lack of ownership or a willingness to share resources. Dispossession and displacement. The arrival of the Henty brothers in Portland marked the beginning of a systematic dispossession of the Gunditjmara people from their ancestral lands. The Europeans, driven by a belief in their own superiority and fueled by a desire for economic gain, implemented policies and practices that would have devastating consequences for the Aboriginal inhabitants. The concept of land ownership, as understood by the British, was utterly foreign to the Gunditjmara people, who had lived in harmony with the land for millennia. The Hentys, emboldened by the backing of the colonial government and operating under the doctrine of terra nullius, land belonging to no one, began to claim vast tracts of land for their pastoral runs. Fences were erected, boundaries were drawn, and the ancient rhythms of life that had sustained the Gunditjmara people for countless generations were shattered. What was once a source of sustenance and spiritual connection was transformed into a commodity to be bought, sold, and exploited for profit. The Gunditjmara people, their traditional hunting grounds now restricted, their access to sacred sites cut off, were forced to adapt to a rapidly changing world. Many were driven to the fringes of European settlement, their traditional way of life becoming increasingly unsustainable. The loss of their land was not simply a matter of economics or geography. It represented a profound spiritual and cultural dispossession. The rise of Talisker Homestead, a symbol of European dominance. As the Henty brothers consolidated their hold on the land surrounding Portland, a tangible symbol of their growing wealth and influence began to take shape. Talisker Homestead. Established by Francis Henty in 1836, Talisker Homestead was more than just a grand residence. It was a testament to the success of the Hentys' pastoral endeavors and a stark reminder of the shifting power dynamics in the region. The homestead, with its sprawling paddocks and its imposing architecture, stood in stark contrast to the traditional shelters and nomadic lifestyle of the Gunditjmara people. Talisker, situated on land that was once the domain of the Gunditjmara people, became a hub of agricultural activity. Sheep grazed on pastures that had once teemed with kangaroos and emus. The sounds of shearing and the barking of sheepdogs replaced the calls of native birds and the rustling of the bush. The transformation of the landscape was as swift as it was complete. The homestead itself, a testament to European architectural styles, served as a constant reminder of the Hentys' dominance over the region. It was a place of social gatherings and business transactions, a symbol of the new order that had been imposed upon the land. The erosion of tradition and its resultant impacts on Aboriginal culture and way of life. The establishment of European settlements like Talisker Homestead had a devastating impact on the cultural practices and traditions of the Gunditjmara people. Their way of life, intrinsically linked to the land and its resources, was upended by the arrival of the Hentys and the rapid expansion of pastoralism. The fences that crisscrossed their traditional hunting grounds, the depletion of native animals and the introduction of foreign diseases all contributed to the erosion of a culture that had endured for millennia. The loss of land, perhaps the most devastating blow, severed the Gunditjmara people from their spiritual connection to their ancestral home. Sacred sites were desecrated, traditional hunting grounds were transformed into pastures, and the stories and songs that had been passed down through generations lost their context in a rapidly changing world. The Gunditjmara people, their connection to their past severed, faced an uncertain future in a land that no longer felt like their own. The introduction of European diseases, to which the Aboriginal people had no immunity, decimated their population. Measles, smallpox, venereal diseases and influenza ripped through communities, leaving behind a trail of death and despair. The social fabric of the Gunditjmara people, already strained by the loss of their land and the disruption of their traditional way of life, was further frayed by the devastating impact of these diseases and the white way of life.